All right, with us now, Congressman Pete Sessions from Texas. He is on the House Oversight Committee, which released these thousands of pages of Epstein documents. Congressman Sessions, great to see you as always. What do you think that Donald Trump, then citizen Trump, knew about the sexual abuse at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein?
John, thank you. These are all questions that why we are trying to meticulously, on a bipartisan basis, go through these. To find the things that you wish to find is what is going on now, and that is the name of Donald J. Trump. But the bottom line is that there are an incredible number of questions that we have been going through with former prosecutors, with the people who had the chain of evidence, about their issues and questions about why they did not move forward, why they offered deals that were offered, and the ways that this thing is unfolded. So to be able to get this huge treasure trove of information is important, and I fully expect we're going to get there. But to suggest that we on a bipartisan basis are not handing out or getting the pages that really begin this process would not be true. We need to keep and continue what we're doing, and I'd like to see it be done to where the country has confidence that it's not being viewed politically, but rather that we will get it all and we will go through it to answer the larger questions, and that is, how did this happen and why did it take so long?
Again, you say there are many questions. You still have a question about whether Donald Trump knew about the sexual abuse at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, I've not gone through all of the documents yet. As you said, there's 20,000 pages. Our staff is going through this. I have been back home in Waco, Texas for the last 3 weeks dealing with the shutdown there. I will get back to it. We will get this done. But what we're doing right now is taking the huge number of emails, of data, of pages, and going through it. And there will be, on a bipartisan basis, an agreement about how we're going to hold formal hearings, who we're going to ask these questions to, and make sure the members are updated.
You have been working a long time to get this information released. The White House yesterday held a meeting at the Situation Room with some of the highest officials in the country, with members of your own party, to try to get them to vote against the discharge petition, which you're against too, I want to say. But why do you think the White House is working so hard as you're working to get stuff released? Why is the White House working so hard to keep information from being released?
John, in fairness to the circumstance, I would say probably for the same reason that President Obama's administration, President Biden's administration did not release this data. The information that we get, where it's factually based and comes from official law enforcement about the conclusions that they drew about who was involved, is one matter. To simply take things that are emails and accusations that people make is not a legitimate way for us to approach this. So I assume that just like President Biden and President Obama and their administrative team at the Department of Justice probably concluded that it needed to be done in a different way. Now, they did not ever really approach it. They did not approach it, and we're trying to do that now.
As far as I know, I will say, neither President Obama nor President Biden is mentioned in these trove of documents that have been released so far. Donald Trump is repeatedly. I do want to ask you, while I have you, Congressman, Ghislaine Maxwell, our MJ Lee's done some terrific reporting on the situation she's now in this prison that she was moved to after she met with the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. She is now given privileges that other prisoners apparently are not: unlimited toilet paper access, private meals and mail delivery, cellmates reassigned for privacy, special visits in the chapel, and the warden helping send documents and emails. How do you feel about Ghislaine Maxwell, this convicted sex offender, being given these privileges?
Well, it is an important question, and I do not know the answer, but I would presume she is in Texas. I would presume it is because she is faced with a hostile environment there in where she is. The confinement is different. People walk around the campus openly, and just like anyone else who receives a lot of feedback of people who are unhappy, I'm sure that's where it is, and she had a reason to meet with officials and to say, I have a problem. And I think that they're trying to be aware of that. It would really not be well received if she, in the incarceration, had problems of threats against her life. So while I do not know, it would not surprise me, and that's something that the committee, chairman of government oversight as I am, will ask those questions and should receive an answer. And I will be prepared to come and provide what I can.
We'll speak with you then, Congressman Pete Sessions. Nice to speak with you. Sarah?